With us now on the West Her Hotline is Dan Shulman, Blue Jays and Mariners Game 4 tonight. Dan got connected again, this time to us through our boss, Alan Davis, who goes way back with Dan. And don't you think it's pretty much time, Dan, where you can feel like you can stop owing him favors?
No, I think it's kind of a lifetime thing. I mean, he took a chance on me a million years ago when nobody else would. So it's the least I can do. Happy to be with you guys.
Very nice. Thank you, Dan. Great to see. We knew we'd be doing this here for a couple days.
We were rooting hard for a Blue Jay win last night.
We're all like, we don't want it to be 3-zip. So
right.
With authority last night, Dan.
Yeah, very much so. And this is kind of who they've been for much of the season, one of the best offensive teams in baseball. But they've had their peaks and valleys, and every time you kind of look at them and say, well, it was a nice run, but maybe that's it, or maybe they're not quite this good, they find a way. They come back and surprise you. I mean, they go to the best pitcher's park in baseball against a really good pitcher who was great in both of his starts against Detroit in the division series, and they just pound them. They wind up hitting 5 homers, 4 doubles in the game, and it's really quite a story, doing it without Bo Bichette, but just finding a way up and down the lineup. And kind of fitting that last night it was Ernie Clement in the 8 spot and Andres Jimenez in the 9 spot who got it started, and then the onslaught continued.
Yeah, I'm curious, Dan. I don't recall exactly. You can certainly fill us in and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Jays were thought to be a team that was going to be contending level, World Series contending level team this year, but it happened that way. Here they are now 2-1 down in the ALCS. I'm wondering if there was a moment this season for you being behind the microphone for all these games where it sort of got real, like they could really do this.
Yeah, and you're right. Not very many people on the outside. People on the inside are saying they always believe, but nobody on the outside thought this was possible. So, and then they were 26 and 28 near the end of May. Like, they just weren't playing very well. They weren't hitting at all. They had a big home run from Bo Bichette, a pinch hit home run at the end of a road trip in Texas that got them a win when they were hardly hitting at all. But I think really when I began to feel it, like through June, they started playing well. And series by series, it was like, boy, they beat this team and they swept that team. Maybe they're pretty good. But it was when the Yankees came into town at the end of June 30th, and then over the Canada Day holiday, July 1st. It was a 4-game series, and the Blue Jays swept it and went from 3 back to 1 up. And, 3 back at the Yankees June 30th is pretty good. You're obviously doing pretty well if you're only 3 games out of first. But I think it was sweeping that series from the Yankees in the middle of the season that made a lot of people think that this team might be for real.
With Dan Shulman, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, I've gotten around with my baseball allegiances over my years, although I've always had a soft spot for the Jays. One of my favorite teams ever was the Cleveland team about 20 years ago, Grady Sizemore, like that group. And the reason why it so clicked for me was that almost the entire roster, Dan, played in Buffalo. Like, it was almost entirely homegrown. And there's some, if not a lot of that, with the Jays right now, not to mention that they literally played seasons here. So right. I feel like, Buffalo has kind of always been more of a Yankees town, but, if you're into baseball this way, the way I was describing, this team really works.
Yeah, and a lot of guys have come through Buffalo. Like you said, I mean, Ernie Clement's a guy who played in Buffalo. Braden Fisher, Mason Fluharty, Trey Yesavage, and there are many others. And, that's been, I think, part of the secret sauce of this team. And listen, they're not a little engine that could. They spend a lot of money. They're a big payroll, big market team, but they've had some really nice stories from the farm system this year. Nathan Lucas spent a lot of time at Buffalo, right, and waited forever for an opportunity, finally got it, made the most of it, and he's become a mainstay on this team. So I think that's one of the reasons why certainly Blue Jays fans in Canada love this team is there are these great success stories. Like, how do you not like Ernie Clement? How do you not root for Nathan Lucas? Et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, what Trey Yesavage has done now. But whether it's people in Buffalo or really anywhere in the U.S., I would think as people watch this team, they look at them and go, boy, they're fun. And I don't know how much. Obviously, we're still doing games on Sportsnet right now. We're allowed to still do playoff games. In the U.S., everybody is seeing Fox, but in Canada, people are still seeing our normal broadcast. But, so I don't know how much, the Fox, Joe and John are getting into the background story of this guy, the background story of that guy. But there are a lot of great stories on this team, and it's a really, really likable bunch. And I think that comes across on TV. So I think there are a lot of different reasons to like this team.
I'd like to fold Vladimir Guerrero Jr. into all this because the big contract right as the season is beginning, that often, in my experience, Dan, can cut two ways, right? Like with it becomes tremendous expectation, and if it isn't going well, then the guy, he doesn't care anymore, or he's not trying, all this sort of stuff that no one really knows about and only guesses at. But yet, he's just come through like a monster here in September and October.
Yeah, well, imagine, let's go into a parallel universe and imagine he didn't sign a contract and he's becoming a free agent at the end of this season. It would be a story to dwarf all stories, right? It would be an unbelievable distraction. So, and like to be honest with you, like he had a good year, but there are times this year where, including the last 3 weeks of the regular season, where he didn't hit very much at all, and the fan base gets a little antsy with him sometimes, because he's so unbelievably talented, as you have seen in the postseason, that whenever he's not hitting doubles and homers, it's like, what's going on, Vladdy? But obviously he's a huge part of the team. He's one of the best hitters in baseball, and I'm really happy for him that he has played well in the playoffs on this big stage, because the 3 previous times the Blue Jays were in the playoffs, they got knocked out in 2 straight, all 3 times, and he didn't do much offensively. So the fact that he demolished the Yankees is, there's no better story for Blue Jays fans than beating the Yankees and your dude doing it to them. And then he had 2 very quiet games against Seattle, but obviously was a monster last night. So, the tale of the contract will be told over the next 14 years. It hasn't even started yet. It starts next season, but right now, what he's doing, especially with Bo Bichette out, they need everything they can get from Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Just a few minutes left with Dan Shulman. Max Scherzer tonight for Toronto. What's he like? I found myself last night going from, it's 0-2, like, this is looking bleak, to, okay, and Scherzer tomorrow, because maybe I'll get vintage Max Scherzer. I don't know. What does your gut tell you on him, and what's been your experience with him?
And my experience with him has been great. I've loved getting to know him better. I knew him a little bit before, but I've loved getting to know him much better. And the energy and intensity that you see, that's real and that's constant. Like, if there's an off switch, I haven't found it on him. He is on all the time. What are we going to get? That's a great question. He had 5-6 starts in a row in the middle of the year, which were great. And then he finished with 5-6 starts at the end of the season, which were rough. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere in between. But if he can just keep him in the game, I think if they can get 4 or 5 innings and he gives up a couple of runs, they would take that. And we don't know. Like, this could be the last start of Max Scherzer's career. We have no idea, right? He's 41, and we don't know if the Blue Jays are going to go to the World Series or if he'll play next year. But he's the logical choice. Bassett was on the IL. He's not stretched out. Barrios is on the IL. You can't really do a bullpen game in the middle of 3 games in 3 days. So I'm hoping that a few weeks away, has gotten him physically better, stronger. His stuff's still good. It's a question of locating. If he doesn't locate, he's going to get hit. So, and the biggest thing to me is the first inning. He's got really rough numbers in the first inning of the games this year, and everybody knows about Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez and all that, the guys he'll face in the first inning. Hopefully he can put a 0 on the board.
Well, he's right in between the age of the starting quarterbacks in the football game tonight, so he shouldn't feel too old. He doesn't have to take a hit, right. At least.
What's the scene out there like, Dan? We know it's playoffs, so I would think it's probably a little harder to get your hands on tickets, but historically, Canadian Blue Jays fans just flood over the border and get in that stadium in Seattle. Has that been what Game 3 was like, or not?
No, it's different. There may be a couple, 2,000-3,000 Canadians here. I mean, I'm sure Mariners tickets scooped up the playoff tickets as soon as they could. And, in May or July or whenever it is the Blue Jays come down here, depending on the year, people do it 8 months in advance. They book hotels, they buy tickets, and whatever you can do. But obviously the tickets are not as readily available in the playoffs. Seattle fans want them. So it's a great scene. I think this is one of the best scenes in baseball, and I think this is one of the most beautiful ballparks in baseball. And I think they have a great fan base. There's no animosity I don't think, between Mariner fans and Blue Jay fans. Even when there are 25,000 Blue Jay fans here during the regular season, everybody's really well behaved on both sides. And I love doing games here, and I commend everybody here in Seattle for being great fans of their team. And it's nice to see. It's not just a few hundred Blue Jay fans. I would guess maybe 2,000 to 3,000, and you can hear them, and certainly you could hear them in the 8th and 9th inning last night.
So it's not quite Sabres Leafs. We've talked about Sabres Leafs, you and I, and I don't know. I'd love to think that if this ever happened, like it has in '99, but like if it happened again, that Sabres fans would own most of that building. But I wonder. I was in Seattle 2 summers ago. I've never been to that ballpark, and I had the whole day before a flight home very early the next morning. I'm like, well, this is my chance. But it was Toronto, and it sort of scared me off that it was like going to be too wild of a scene. I don't know. It was still like a July baseball game. But
how wild could it be? Really?
I know. I regret not going. Anyway. Thank you, Dan. Great work over the years, and hopefully someday we'll talk again.
All right, guys. Thank you. Enjoy the game.
All right. We hope to.
Do.
Dan Shulman on the Wester Hotline. Blue Jays and Mariners, the second game of the day. The first one is Milwaukee, L.A. at 6.